And good morning, Mike. How are you this morning?
Well, thanks, Terry. Yeah,
welcome back to.
Good to be back on board. And indeed, good morning to Terry and good morning to Paul. Paul's here today to promote, in particular, the Classic Car Show.
Paul Markham, of course.
Later in March.
So, good morning, gentlemen. Good morning, listeners.
Thanks for coming along once again. It's one of the largest events that caters for the classic car fraternity here in Perth, and this will be the third year it's been held at Ascot Racecourse, and generally that's regarded as a very satisfactory venue, and it's getting bigger and better each year. Just before I do hand over to Paul, I'm just going to briefly mention a couple of events that are scheduled for this weekend. First of all, we've got a Drive Your Triumph Day tomorrow, Sunday the 10th, and it's to celebrate the anniversary of Sir John Black's birthday. He was the Managing Director, Chairman of the Standard Motor Company, and they in turn bought out Triumph just after the war in 1945. And this is being coordinated internationally by one of the American clubs, and the local Triumph club, the TSOA, probably in conjunction with the Triumph Car Club. We have two Triumph clubs in Perth, are going to meet at the tennis centre at Burswood, the Perth State Tennis Centre, and they're arriving at 8:40 a.m. On Sunday morning. You need to be prompt. It's a good idea to be early, as it's going to be a very hot day. Between 8:55 and 9 a.m. they'll be taking photographs of Triumph sports cars and their owners, not just sports cars, Triumph sedans as well. And then at 9:15 there'll be more photos and coffee at the City View Cafe, that's at the Burswood Stadium, and then by 10:15 it's starting to get a bit warm. Go home and relax. So that's an event for all Triumph enthusiasts. Organised, I believe, by the local branch of the Triumph Sports Owners Association. So be at the Perth State Tennis Centre at Burswood, park around the back, and be there by 8:40 a.m. The other event that's on tomorrow here in Kalamunda at Stirk Park is the MGTC Owners Club Concord Elegance, and that's also starting early from 9:30 a.m. Now the beauty of Stirk Park is you can turn up. Parking's no problem. You can wander around the corner and have a cup of coffee, buy a newspaper, and stroll up to the local growers market and buy your fruit and veg. So there's something for everyone in the family to do. The TC Owners Club has been it's been extant for 58 years. One of the oldest established car clubs here in Western Australia. Very keen bunch of fellows. I was invited to attend one of their meetings this week, and they've been meeting approximately once a fortnight for 58 years. It was meeting number 1435, and they cater for pre-war MG sports cars, particularly the immediate post-war MGTC, the TD, the TF up to 1955, and the MGY type. So that's Kalamunda, Stirk Park tomorrow morning. One other event tomorrow, which I'll quickly mention, is the Perth Poker Run. It's a cruise from the UWA Business School car park in Hackett Drive, Crawley, and that's from 10:30 a.m. You can get further details from Facebook, and that's the same venue that's used on a regular basis for classic cars and coffee. Now I'd like to hand over to Paul Markham, who's going to tell you a bit about the Classic Car Show at Ascot.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, and good morning, listeners. Yes, as Mike just mentioned, this year it's the 50th year of the Classic Car Show. It's been a long-standing event since 1969. I think there was only 1 year that they didn't hold it.
What was that, during the Second World War?
During the war. Yeah, that's... yeah. Anyway, and as you said, you just threw me there, Terry.
Quite that old.
Quite that old. But yeah, it's been a long-standing event in the classic motoring calendar, and as Mike mentioned, it's the third year at Ascot. And as you said, Ascot is just becoming such a good venue for this show, and for other shows that they host there. It's not always just about the racing, but yeah, we've got lots and lots of interest again. We're up at around 900 vehicles registered to attend, and I know there are a few clubs out there that may have misplaced their club entry form. Excuse me. But they can always contact me either by Facebook or email.
Best of luck there.
You'll find lots.
And obviously, the sooner the better.
The sooner the better. Yes, as I said, we've got about 900 cars. It's not just cars. We've got motorcycles, we've got scooters, we've got buses. We're talking about 5 vintage buses this year, which is going to make a pretty spectacular display. We've got a vintage caravan club coming to show off their interesting vehicles. So that's another interesting thing that we're bringing. We're getting a lot of interest from other clubs that are not necessarily motoring clubs themselves, but they're other vintage and special interest groups that complement this kind of show, and they're asking, can we display at your show? And we welcome that. We'd like to see other interesting
makes for
things.
more variety.
Yes, yeah. The Vintage Speedway Association contacted me as well, and they're looking to put up some of their vintage sports cars and races and motorcycles. So that's another bit of interest that we can show. So we've got about 65, 66 clubs, motoring clubs, have registered. So that's a large section of the entire combined Council of Motoring Clubs association. I think we've got 108 clubs under the banner, but some of those clubs are, of course, out in the country. So
It's a really good response.
It's really, it's like more than 70% of all of the Perth-based clubs.
And have you got the Vintage Radio Club at this time?
Yes, they're
coming
again.
On from Wireless Hill.
Yes, and I think they've got a show on this week. Yes,
Vinyl Records.
Vinyl Records, which is they're making a comeback, ladies and gentlemen. They're definitely making a comeback. But yeah, that's another great thing to look at and see as well. Something that's you don't get to see out very often. So it's a really, really great show. Good for all the family, of course. It's $10 entry per adult, and children under 16 are free. So, it's a good family kind of afternoon. There's lots of food and beverages available at Ascot. There'll be more ice cream. It was the number one.
Is that important?
It is very important on a hot day.
I look for that.
Yes, the one item of feedback we got, what could we do better this year was more ice cream. So we're listening to the customer and doing something about it.
And you've got some coffee vans as well, because everyone likes to drive on that sort of thing.
Yes, we've got more coffee vans this time, and this year's it's low light espresso, which is in a vintage.
I thought it was a Morris Minor coffee. Is it?
No. Well, last year we had the Citroen Patron van, which they're our preferred vendor. Very good coffee and a wonderful van.
Are they coming this year?
They couldn't make it, so we've got
flat tyre.
There's of course the Citroen H van with a corrugated iron body panel.
Yes, it's a wonderful machine.
Oh dear.
But it's backed up by really excellent coffee, so I think that's a good thing. But Low Light Espresso, they've got a vintage Volkswagen Combi van which they use to sell. So again, it fits in with the theme, and it's all very
excellent.
Good. Yeah.
Well, what you need is an old Mr. Whippy van.
That would be fantastic.
Yes,
there must be one or two still out there.
There's still a couple of commas there. The original vans. Now I tell you what, I worked in Hay Street.
Yes.
Hay Street. Let me just say, Murray Street West.
Yep.
All right, Murray Street West. When I started out back in 19 working
just after the war.
Mr. Whip. I didn't stop. There was Mr. Whippy was across the road. That's what they produced, and they had about 8 or 10 or 12 comma vans. They all came out from England. They were fully imported. And Mr. Whippy brand, of course. Now, of course, I think it's a franchise that you've got to buy into very heavily to get the name, actually.
Yes, but they don't have the same character.
Oh, no.
Mind you, I suppose if they're driving around the streets, if you're driving in a comma van, you are driving very slowly. You want to be able to get where you
but
where
as
you're
long as you
going.
play green sleeves, of course. but
You're
I
not
was-
meant to race around in an ice cream van.
But bearing in mind, I was at the Hyde Park big display day,
Which
is
is coming up on the
coming
3rd
up.
of March.
Now there, a couple of years ago, was an original comma van, Mr. Whippy van. So there is a couple around.
That's good.
I mean, carry on.
Try and
So,
find them there.
Now, I've now stopped your flow of, I'm going to say misinformation regarding this wonderful event on the 20th.
Yes,
24th
yes.
of March.
I hadn't
24th
actually
of
said the
March.
date yet, had I?
No,
Yes, but it
I'm
is
just-
Sunday.
Get back on the rails. I've just derailed you talking about whippy vans.
So it's a good time slot.
Yes.
Last week in March. With any luck at all, it won't be too hot.
Yes, we're hoping for.
Because the beauty of Ascot,
Cool breeze.
there's not actually a lot of shade for motor vehicles, but there is plenty of shade for people.
Yes, and Ascot have done some renovations, or not so much renovations, but they've added more shade into a lot of the spaces,
Excellent.
which is really, really good to see. So some of the cars are going to be in the sun, but there's a lot more shade for people to walk around under
Well,
and
some
sit
people
down
say
under.
their pride and joy should be in the sun. It's the sunshine of their life. You like
that? Very, very, very witty there, Terry.
It only comes and goes. More generally goes before it comes.
Yes. So the show opens for the general public at 10 and it goes through till 3. You'll want to be there before 3, of course, because that's when people start leaving. As I said, $10 per adult. Children under 16 are free. One of the other bits of feedback we got from last year was that there were very long queues at the gate because
For the public?
For the public,
Oh.
yes, it's because we were unprepared for how busy it would be, and it was an amazing
Well,
year
it was the
last
first
year.
move, wasn't it? It was
No,
the
it was
first
the second.
move.
Second move. So the
that's
first
right.
year was a bit. We had suffered from weather, and so we didn't get as many vehicles and didn't get as many people. But the second year, last year, was an absolute. It was huge. We had 8,500 people through the gates, plus children. Of course, we weren't counting the children. So this year we'll be having 2 gates open, and both car parks. And car parking is, of course, free. There's lots of car parking at
It's a huge amount of car
Ascot.
park.
So again,
So what are you doing about the queues? You're saying that you had queuing?
we'll have 2 gates open,
second
one at
gate.
either end, so that you can come in from one side or the other side.
What makes sense? There'll be some flyers coming out a bit closer to the time.
Yes, there's flyers. Well, at the moment, online is probably the best place to find information. Facebook
That's where most
page.
people are getting it from.
Yes, yeah, there are flyers out with clubs, and hopefully they're getting spread around. And I should have bought one so I could put on your wall up here, but
And it's not here.
no, I forgot.
It's pretty early in the day, isn't it?
It was very early in the day. I have to drive all the way up from Fremantle. So it was a long drive.
Do we have to do an outside broadcast outside your door next time to actually get you here?
I'll come. I'll make the journey.
Oh, you
It's a good test drive for your recently restored car.
Which you're going
Yes.
to talk about a little bit later, presumably. You're
We,
going to talk
we,
about that?
we can certainly mention Eastern European cars.
So, did you want to talk about? Do you want to listen to me waffle on about that
Let's hear a
yet,
bit about,
or
let's hear
shall
a bit
we?
about the Tatra. Yes,
The
it's an
Tatra.
interesting car.
Okay, the Tatra. Yes, you can see the gentleman here can look through the window of the radio station and can see this huge silver Zeppelin-shaped item in
Floating
their car
in.
park. Yeah, floating in with a massive rumbling tractor engine in its back. So that is a 1952 Tatraplan. It was built in Czechoslovakia. It was the last year they built them. Tatra were a really, really unusual company. They were really at the cutting edge of a lot of automotive development in the 1930s, and were really the company that got the rear engine concept working first. Firstly, they had air-cooled flat engines that they had in their front-mounted cars in the 1920s. And then in about 1933, 34, they experimented by putting it into the rear. And it wasn't really that successful as a small car. So they decided, instead of just throwing out the idea, they would redo this car project as a massive, great limousine with a V8 air-cooled engine at the back of the car.
It's
Why
pretty
not?
radical.
It was absolutely radical. Nothing had been seen like that at all at the time. And it just blew people away. It was so space age when you compare it to what was going at that time. It
Very
was,
streamlined body shape.
Yes.
Now, was that before the Chrysler Airflow?
It was actually the same year, but they were
right.
developed independently. And when you look at a Chrysler Airflow, it's conventional. It looks like a conventional car. The
Yes.
engine is in the right place, and but that was considered totally radical, and it failed because it was so different in the American market. Whereas the Tatra was lauded everywhere as being, this is the cutting edge of automobile design. The Europeans were far more avant-garde than the American
They were.
consumers.
Yeah.
So Tatra then developed that particular idea, and they came out with another model which was V8, huge V8 engined car, which is similar in appearance to the car that's in the car park down there at the moment, but that one was bigger. That was the small-bodied version that came out. Yes, I know. was their smaller car that had a flat 4 2-litre engine that went in the back, and they started with a version of that in 1938, but they only built 100 of them, and then there was a little bit of a political crisis after
War
that.
intervened.
War
Oh,
intervened.
not the war again.
Not the war, yes.
Don't mention the war.
Don't mention the war. So after the war, the company then dusted that design off and modified it a bit, and made it a little bit cheaper, because post-war times were tough.
Times are tough.
But I mean, it's certainly not a cheap car. They were actually really expensive vehicles for their time. It was like 1951. They showed one at the Melbourne show here, which seems such a remarkable thing. I've got some contemporary reviews of the car, and people were just blown away because in Australia
It would have looked like it was from another planet.
it did, and
A bit like the DS.
yes, yeah, absolutely. It's amazing how
So
how different this was.
how did it come to Australia? In private import or?
No, this was actually one of the original cars that was shipped over. So they
by a dealer.
Yes, yeah,
distributor? In
yeah.
Perth or in
it was sold. They were all sold in Melbourne and Sydney.
Right.
So it was one of the original, and we think that there were about 20 that were shipped over in 1952. By that stage, they'd stopped production of the model. They stopped in 1952, but this last
That was
batch
good
went
planning
over.
by the dealer was going to make a lot of money out of that.
Well, the country became communist by that stage, and they sold it all through one dealership. So they had Tatra as being their luxury product, Skoda was being their, quite a few Skodas came over here in the 1950s as well.
I remember the 110 MB, was it?
Yes, that rear-engined version that came out, that was like a replacement for the Tatraplan, but a lot more budget. And then they had Jawa motorcycles and Seated motorcycles as well came over here. And they're all
Extensively
sold.
used in Speedway.
Yes, very popular in the Speedway. So again, a little two-stroke motor that just, you could tune up to tear around the bends.
Still in use to this day with the historic Speedway people.
Yes, maybe we'll see some of them at the Classic Car
Well,
Show. It would be really good.
We'll get John Howell on board and get him to bring along one or two of his Speedway machines.
Yes. So that car has always lived in Australia. It was Australian delivered. We don't really know what happened to it up until the 1980s. It was restored in the 80s originally, and then it was bought by the York Motor Museum. And it stayed there for 30-something odd years. And then, by good fortune or ill, I acquired it.
Was it before you knew your wife or after you knew your wife?
Oh,
which chronological order did that happen? Did you introduce and say, hello, I'm Paul Mark, and look at this, I'll take out this car? Or was
No, it was a much more of a rocky road question than that. It was kind of an accidental purchase because I'd seen it at the York Motor Museum, and I'd said to Shelley, "Oh my God, a Tatra in Australia! That's amazing. That's my dream car."
And she said, leave it in the York Museum.
Yeah. And then the car just happened to be
Driven away.
Yes, and I made a ill-considered comment at the time that they were trying to sell it, but of course so few people know anything about
What it
car.
is.
What it is. So, you know, you can talk about rarity, and this often happens with classic cars and things. You know, you can have a really, really rare vehicle, and it won't sell. It won't make any money because no one knows anything about it, and no one's willing to pay money for it. So it was one of those questions.
The internet's probably changed it a little. I'm guessing you bought that car quite a few years ago, Paul.
Yeah, probably about 5 years ago.
Oh, not so long.
No, not so long.
Oh,
It was
right.
theoretically it was running at the time.
Oh,
But
so you're well established with your relationship with your wife before you actually.
it was lucky that I'd already told her that's my dream car, because I was in a conversation and someone said, "Oh, you know, the car's probably worth about X dollars," and I said, "Oh God, if you would take that, I'd buy that."
Well done.
Well,
What they said was, you know, like, "Oh well, I'll let him know," and then I got a phone call on the Monday after that conversation and said, "I'll take it." It's like, oh, and then I had to tell my wife. I said, "I think I just committed to buy another car."
Done deal. Done deal. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we'll briefly mention the York Motor Museum. It's very much still up and running. That's
they're
the
coming
important thing.
down. Aren't they coming down to talk to us?
Well, I'm hoping so. We're sort of in communication with the new committee that run the York Motor Museum.
Quite
It was first opened by Peter Briggs and James Harwood. James was the first curator, and that was in December 1979. So this will be their 40th year of continuous operation. Now, Peter's now disposed of that museum, which he initiated in York, but it's been now taken over by the local council and the tourist bureau and a body of volunteers. Probably don't know quite as much as I should about the actual management structure, but we will find out more. The important thing is it's open between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. every day of the year, with a possible exception of Christmas Day. It has rare examples of yesteryear. It's got the first British vehicle to do 100 miles per hour, the world's fastest go-kart, a Napier, right. The first motor vehicle that came to WA, I believe I'm right in saying, possibly the world's oldest Volkswagen Beetle. It's got a good range of pedal cars for the kids, motorcycles for the enthusiast, and a large memorabilia collection. So it's a good little museum. It's in the main street of York, easy to find. Bring the family along and make half a day of it. There's something for everyone. And they do cater for tour groups. Give them a bit of advance warning if you're going up as a tour group. And the friendly staff are there to show you around, and it's a not-for-profit community group, inexpensive to get in, and yes, we do look forward to having someone from the York Motor Museum appear on Around the Bend.
Yeah, that's good. I'm heading up to York in over Easter, I think, and I'm planning on taking the Tatra up there and
Taking it back to the
take it back
home.
to us, home, and I'm going to speak to them and see if we can put it out the front or something, and they
Put
can-
it out the front. What, near the skip bin?
Oh, Terry, you're going right.
In dangerous ground
You
now.
get out.
I'm only batting for Shelley. That's all.
Shelley loves the car. It's a beautiful car.
And for those listeners that have a penchant for the oddball, of course,
Don't
the
talk about
Tatra and other Eastern European vehicles will be in the SIVA stand at the Classic Car Show. And SIVA's an interesting club. It caters for the oddball and the unusual. It's got quite a broad scope. And it stands for special.
And we're not talking about the members.
Well, we could be, but certainly the cars. It stands for Special Interest Vehicle Association. Just very briefly give us a sort of overview of the sort of cars that belong to SIVA.
Okay, yes, we've got a really, really wide range of vehicles, all kinds of... I kind of described it as the lost sock drawer of car clubs because it was originally founded to cater for microcars, because there were a few people with crazy little microcars, Messerschmitts and Heinkels and BMW Isettas, And I mean, where do those people go? You know, you can't go at...
I go and use. It used to be up near
Greylands?
South Perth. Greylands,
Greylands,
yes. They closed it down, so they don't know where to go now. Where the hell are their meetings now?
Well, we hold them in people's houses. You know,
Dear.
usually with big
Moved around.
fences around it to keep them in. But yeah, they're the kind of vehicles that originally you couldn't really take them on long cruises or anything that other car clubs would do. So it's you just get all that group of cars and owners together. And it has expanded and expanded on from that to other vehicles that, or other marques that don't really warrant having a club of their own. Like I've got the DKW and the Tatra. They fit in there. We've got a couple of Skodas and
have you got an NSU Prinz?
Yes,
Sure.
we've got about 4 in the club. Yes, it was a popular little car. One of the guys got.
Then we have Chevy Corvairs.
Yes, we Chevrolet. Well, actually, this is an interesting
What are
thing.
they?
That's a growing area at the moment within the club, because it started with one person had a Chevrolet Corvair, which of course is the American rear-engined sedan. I think it's got a flat six
like a Porsche.
Yes, yeah, very. They're actually a wonderful car. They got that bad reputation out of that.
Courtesy of Ralph Nader.
Yeah, that book, and he didn't actually mean that car was the worst car in America, but the majority of American cars were really poorly designed. But he used that one as the showpiece. But if you've ever driven one, and I have, we did. One of the things SIVA does is it does a drive another car day.
Which is a great concept.
Yes, yes. So
Oh,
you
right.
bring in
Drive another car day.
Yes,
How
it's
do you get from that into a Messerschmitt?
well, yes, that's the thing about it. You know,
Do you have your
here you
flying
go.
goggles
Here's a.
and you talk biggles?
Some people do. Some people do. One of the guys with the Messerschmitt, he's got little wings that he attaches to it when he drives it around. Little tail and that. It's
Nothing
pretty
would
amusing.
surprise
Pretty
me.
amusing.
That's before he gets to the general meeting at somebody's house, is it?
Yes, yes. But then, these Corvairs. So one person got one, and a few other people drove it and realised what a wonderful car it is. It really drives marvellously. And again, for an American, I mean, they call it a small car in America. But it's a very large car in Australia, you'd say. We've now got about 6 on the way. There's one guy's got a van. He's got
Corvair van,
yeah,
very rare.
very rare. Yeah, with the side that drops
I
down.
don't think we ever had them here.
Yeah, I think it was an import. He's got the sports Monza. He's got a convertible, which was apparently one that they bought over as a test vehicle, and they were planning on at one stage releasing it under a Holden badge.
That would have been interesting.
Yes, they bought it over as a test vehicle and they tried it out and the test driving.
This would have been about the same era as the EJ, I'm thinking,
EJ,
early 60s.
Yeah, about 65 or 6, I think it was.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then they decided no, they wouldn't go ahead with that particular project. But they left the car here and it's passed around to a bunch of people. And it has had a very hard life, but he's really done a great job of like getting it all restored. So that'll be on the road probably within about a year. And then 3 other guys have gone, great car, they bought them over from the US. And because of their unorthodox nature with the engine in the back, they're really lowly priced for what you get. They're a really, really good value car that you can get at a really low price. So
That's excellent.
Paul, that was very interesting talk. Thanks very much. We'll be plugging the Classic Car Show and bringing you more details over the next 4 or 5 weeks. It's good to be back on air, and don't forget we're here to talk mainly about classic cars, the Australian motoring scene, local motorsport, and we're more than happy to promote any club events that you'd like us to mention. And from time to time we'll have a guest speaker to talk about their particular car or their particular car club. And please do get in touch with us and let us know what you'd like us to promote on your behalf. So Paul, I'd like to thank you very much for coming up once again.
it's always a pleasure.
And I'm sure you'll come up again. We want you to be a bit of a regular. We've got plenty of things to talk about.
Oh, yeah, like stick a microphone in front of me and I'll just talk for hours.
Oh dear. We'll thank Harry for that and make sure Harry doesn't come again. All right then, great to hear from. Great, and we'll be back again at
We'll be back on air same time next week. So tune in to Round the Bend. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.